Oh my, 1998 was an exciting time for us gamers, and not just because your favourite member of TripleJump was born that year. Those of us lucky enough to own a console or PC were blessed with a smorgasbord of classic titles, with the year spawning gems like The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, Resident Evil 2 and Baldur's Gate. As years go, 1998 wasn't the absolute worst in gaming history. In fact, we struggled to find many games that were both truly ploppers and fit our criteria. Don't worry though, they were out there, and we're back to share the pain of how gloriously rubbish they all are. Once again, we've plundered the depths of game rankings, and this time it's to bring you the definitive list of the most horrible titles of 1998. As always, a game must have been released in at least one territory in 1998 and have received at least 7 proper critic reviews in order to be eligible for our list. Buckle up kids, it's going to be a bumpy ride. No, we can't get McDonald's afterwards, we've got food at home. I'm Ashton from TripleJump, and here are the 10 worst games of 1998. Number 10, Industry Giant, PC, 48%. Sometimes you'll hear critics saying that a game isn't for everyone. As an example, Dark Souls isn't for everyone because the steep difficulty curve might prove too frustrating for those who play video games to relax. This doesn't make it a bad game, it just means it has a more specific audience in mind. Industry Giant, on the other hand, probably isn't a game for anyone. Sure, the premise has some appeal, i.e. real-time economic strategy simulation, but once most players got some enjoyment from 1 or 2 scenarios, they started to question where the fun would begin. Critics felt very much the same, slating the game for its lack of gameplay diversity. It was compared unfavourably to the 1995 title Capitalism. This was also a business simulation game, however, it included a whole load of features that Industry Giant just simply didn't bother with, such as a stock market, competitor activities that actually impacted your business, and the ability to undertake research and development. Mostly, the negative reception came down to the fact that everything Industry Giant tried to do was being done better elsewhere by someone else. Surprisingly, all of the negative press didn't stop it from selling extremely well, and a sequel was released in 2002. Number 9, Nagano Winter Olympics 98, N64, 47.77%. Oh yeah, here we go, sports time! I've played a sports collection before. I tried the move further away from the table technique and I couldn't see the ball. But I've never played a winter sports collection, so I'm going to give this everything I've got. As you can probably guess, given its inclusion on this list, Nagano Winter Olympics is not a good game. Released as a tie-in for the 1998 Winter Olympics game, Konami's title allowed players to get stuck into a whopping 10 different Olympic events, including skiing, luge, bobsleigh and snowboarding. And if all that sounds like too much adrenaline, you can also try your hand at curling. The PlayStation version did at least receive some praise for its graphics and sound, however the Nintendo 64 version did not fare quite so well. Critics panned the title for its shallow gameplay, which meant that for many of the events, players barely had anything to do beyond pressing a couple of buttons. Aside from the oversimplified controls, both players and reviewers were unhappy with the lack of variety in the courses, with most events only having the one, and were less than impressed with the crummy frame rate and overall lack of fun that the game delivered. Apparently the curling's alright though, so at least there's that. Number 8, Batman and Robin, PlayStation, 47.37%. Personally, I was surprised that a film as outstanding as 1997's Batman and Robin could have spawned a terrible video game, but I suppose that is the curse of the movie tie-in.
He looks just like George Clooney.
He does look just like George Clooney.
Joking aside, both the film and the video game Batman and Robin were critical flops. In fact, the only thing that really distinguishes the two in terms of quality is the lack of bat nips in the game.
He doesn't have nipples, does he?
Really on the edge of his ribcage there.
The game itself closely follows the plot of the movie and is up to players to explore Gotham City in order to find clues as to what Mr. Freeze and Poison Ivy are up to, then put them together to deduce where they're going to show up next. As premises go, it's not the worst we've ever heard, but sadly that's just about all Batman and Robin has going for it. One of the biggest flaws is the game's camera, and although it's played in third person, the camera itself remains fixed throughout. Presumably in order to give it a more cinematic feel, but it just ends up being a hindrance. The controls are also on the unwieldy side, forcing players to toggle running, fighting and dodging using the shoulder buttons, which is fine, but quickly becomes a pain when in combat. So with all that in mind, I'm afraid this is one game we're going to have to send to the cooler. Number 7, GT64 Championship Edition, the N64, 46.52%. You wouldn't think it's all that difficult to make a successful racing game. After all, the only thing players are really after is a thrill of driving obscenely expensive cars round interesting courses at speeds high enough to make your average traffic cop's eyes water. Oh, and good tunes as well. You've got to have the good tunes. Sadly, my genius formula clearly didn't make it to the desks of the GT64 Championship Edition developers, and as a result, the game is laughably bad. For one thing, it boasts a frankly embarrassing 3 courses, which if we were naive, we might chalk up to it being over 20 years old, but Gran Turismo has 11 tracks, and that was released in 1997. For shame, GT64, for shame. Not only was the content severely lacking, but the tracks the game did have were a nightmare to drive around, owing to all of the 90-degree angles and U-turns. When you then add sloppy controls and unacceptably low frame rates into the mix, it becomes basically unplayable. Don't worry though, because at least through all of this, GT64 Championship Edition had a banging soundtrack. What do you mean there's no music? What, I'm just expected to sit there and listen to the engine running the whole time? That's ridiculous. Number 6, Sega Touring Car Championship, PC, 44.14%. It turns out that GT64 Championship Edition isn't the absolute worst thing that happened to a racing game in 1998, as Sega also had a go at wrecking the genre with touring car championships for the PC. Originally an arcade title, Sega Touring Car Championships was ported to PC in 1998 to a less than stellar reception. On the one hand, it did improve upon GT64 Championship Edition by bringing one whole other track to the table. However, it did fall down in a whole lot of other ways. One of the main criticisms levelled at Sega Touring Car Championship was just how realistic it was. This is, of course, a bit of a double-edged sword, especially these days where we accuse a game's graphics of being naff if you can't see every last pore on the protagonist's face. But it turns out you can take realism too far when it comes to the detriment of the gameplay. Critics just found the driving to be too much like driving a real car, which wasn't helped by the touchy controls, so rather than just be able to put your foot down and whiz around the tracks, more often than not you'd find your car lodged into the nearest barrier. Ooh, better call the RAC. Number 5, Deadly Arts, N64, 41.17%. With a name like Deadly Arts, you might be fooled into thinking that this title might at least be a little bit interesting.
Ha! Wrong! Shut up!
If only because it's trying its darndest to be Mortal Kombat. But it turns out you'd be wrong, because aside from its name being more or less a synonym of the words mortal and combat, it shares very little with the gory 1993 fighter. Deadly Arts, or GASP Fighters Next Stream if you want to get Japanese and European about this, follows a group of fighters who each receive a mysterious letter pertaining to a legendary quest and the disappearance of its champion. Similar in gameplay to the likes of Tekken and Virtua Fighter, Deadly Arts sees players going head-to-head with AI fighters against whom they must use combos in order to succeed, and rack up as many points as possible. Sadly, the game doesn't have any of the things that made its forerunners exciting. The story was naff, the characters were generic, and it didn't do anything to set itself apart from the crowd. It also suffered from general shoddiness, so not only was it boring, but its graphics were rubbish and the controls didn't work properly. Deadly Arts? More like Deadly Farts? Number 4, C, The Contra Adventure, PlayStation, 39.14%. Before we were even able to get started researching this one, our writer was annoyed on the account of the fact every time she attempted to Google the game, her browser decided to search her PC instead. So apologies if this entry is somewhat biased, but hey, stupid game names win stupid prizes. The Contra Adventure is the 8th release of the Contra series, which started out as a well-regarded arcade run-and-gun shooter before making the leap onto home consoles, where it remained a hit with players and critics alike. This was until developer Appaloosa Studios took over and the series entered 3D territory whilst also taking a sharp turn into Cruddy Town. Though The Contra Adventure does dip its toe into the side-scrolling pool, it sadly failed to capture anything else that made its predecessors so beloved. The graphics were blocky and pixelated, so much so that even at the time they were considered naff, the sound, both in terms of music and effects, is just awful, and the gameplay isn't the slightest bit engaging. Fortunately, The Contra Adventure was only ever released in North America, so at least its crumminess was confined to just the one continent. Number 3, Fox Sports Golf 99, PlayStation, 38.75%. Oh yeah, here we go. Nope, I'm not doing that twice in one list. If you like sports, and you don't care who knows, then we highly recommend you steer well clear of Fox Sports Golf 99. Or at the very least, you don't touch the PlayStation release with a 40-foot pole. Apparently, the PC release isn't half bad, but we're not here to talk about good games. No sir. Or madam. If anything, the cold reception that greeted the PS version of Fox Sports Golf 99 was worsened by the fact that the PC edition was just so much better. The graphics alone were far superior, garnering applause from critics for the realistic water and foliage effects, neither of which were present on the PlayStation release. Both versions of the game did receive criticism for how difficult they were, with many players struggling to putt their balls successfully. You know, the one thing you really need to be able to do in golf. This was caused by the game's frustrating putting interface, which didn't differentiate its swing meters from different clubs, meaning that it was actually harder to sink a shot at short distance than it was a long one. Isn't that just terrific?
Suck my white ass ball!
Number 2, Extreme Tennis, PC, 36.19%. If you're going to have the balls, no pun intended, to call your game Extreme Tennis, then you better ensure that it's the wacky experience that players will infer from the title, rather than the damp squib that this one turned out to be. Far from being an exciting venture that pits players against the most radical and gnarly tennis maestros from around the world, Extreme Tennis shuffles lazily onto the court, unenthusiastically rallies the ball a few times, then turns in early so it can watch Coronation Street. Above all else, the game was criticised for being too darned easy. It's slow-paced, meaning that you basically have to go out of your way not to hit the ball, which is fine when you're learning the controls, but it doesn't make for a particularly stimulating game overall. Speaking of controls, critics found they were about the only thing posing any kind of challenge. When this is combined with the uninspiring graphics, the copy and pasted character models, and the slow gameplay, you end up with a game that makes you feel less John McEnroe and more like you're being forced to play tennis by a less than interested PE teacher. And number 1, The Fifth Element, PlayStation, 32%. The curse of the movie tie-in strikes once again, only this time, the game is here to blemish the legacy of a properly beloved film. Yes, we're of course talking about the video game version of the 1997 film, The Fifth Element. The game follows protagonists Lilo and Corbin, Mila Jovovich and Bruce Willis respectively in the film. The players must progress through 16 different levels, all while fighting the police, the Mangalores and Zorg and his thugs. Although the PC version was given a very generous score of 82% by PC Zone magazine, the PlayStation edition didn't fare anywhere near as well, garnering a pitiful average of 32% on game rankings. Among the criticisms were the poor level design, boring puzzles, and just the fact that the game didn't bring anything new to the action-adventure genre, and was not in any way fun to play. It also suffered from a cumbersome control system, a jumpy camera that got stuck a lot of the time, and an enemy AI that was insultingly dumb. In short, if you weren't a fan of the movie, there was really nothing here for you, and even if you were, there still wasn't much enjoyment to be had either.